Hello, everybody. Today is the 3rd of November, and this is the Flux Dev Meeting. Brilliant. So I will quickly go through the current kind of backlog and the things we've done since the last meeting. But before that or during that, if you want to add anything to the topics to be covered on the agenda today, that would be absolutely brilliant. So I will share my screen right now. Let's hope my thing is not gonna crash. Brilliant. Cool. So let's quickly go through all the things we've done since the last dev meeting. So the RFC about securing points across controllers, the Sanskar proposed is now merged. That pretty much consolidates how how we enable or block the use of HTTP endpoints across the board. Also, another PR that Sanskar started a while ago that we've been working really hard on that around getting all the changes for the packet, the Git package into the controllers. That is now merged in both source controller and the image automation controller, which again is more good news around the Git fronts. Let me just see this one. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So this is actually, there is another one that does the same thing, but that was not done as of yet. This as well, this is actually just closed. Cool. All right, this is the same as that we talked before on the RFC. We started bumping the Golang with libgit2. I think I mentioned that before, but we haven't merged that by the last meeting. So that's now merged into the package, which again will be rolled out on the next minor release. The implementation of cosine verification for Helm charts. Well, I can quickly open that. I don't know if there's anything folks want to talk about this specific PR, but otherwise I'll just carry on.
We talked about it, I think, when we talked about the latest Flux release. Okay,
cool. Brilliant. On top of that, there is this other PR recently about getting the CLO monitor to 100%. So CLO monitor is pretty much a kind of website that tracks some security standards, and Stefan kind of pretty much did a lot of, a few changes there to make sure that we were 100% compliant to the security posture required for that CLO monitor. So that was a really good one as well. This goes around more of the changes around Git. Some of the challenges we had in the past around GoGit was that depending on what you had on your Git repository, as soon as you did a clone, that repository would actually be dirty because GoGit FS would make some amendments to it. So for example, if you had an execute bit on a given file, it would change that, and also it would change symbolic links that had absolute path outside of the path for the repository, the temporary folder that we create. So to fix those things, we created an implementation for ourselves within the FluxCD package that mitigates those problems and pretty much works to our needs really. So that this was one of the things we had to do to make sure that GoGit would support everything we needed. So that was merged recently as well. So yeah, so this is the RFC about the cosine verification that we talked about just now. This is just a small change on the FS that I mentioned before. So when we're talking about the GoGit implementation, it assumes that both files and symlinks have already directories created, and during the initial implementation, I skipped that. So this pretty much made it 100% compliant with the upstream FS, well, OSFS. Cool. And then both this top two PRs are actually related to one of the first points that I mentioned, which is getting the Flux Dev package into source controller and image automation controller. So that is that. Few more things. Given that we forked GoGit, we now need to make sure that the dependencies are up to date, not only for the project itself, but also for the GitHub Actions. So that is that. And another change is on memory usage optimization. So the reason behind this is that if you only use to libgit2, for example, on image automation controller, and you convert or you start using GoGit, you might have some worse off stats, especially for Go garbage collection. And the reason for that is that now everything will happen within Go instead of happening on C and Go, but mostly on C. So because of that, we decided to do some optimizations to make sure that, you know, from performance perspective and metrics, we won't be worse once we start going towards GoGit. Cool. So that is that. And the other two changes is about force push. So when we're talking about image automation controller, there's one scenario that may or may not work based on your Git status. So if you have a branch to do the clone, and then you're pushing into a separate branch, depending on the status and the reference between those two branches, you might just have consistently failing your reconciliations, because at the moment we don't force push, which means if you have a stale push branch, it will just fail until you delete it. So on the next reconciliation, it would be refreshed and recreated. Well, actually, just recreated. With these changes, what it would mean is, even if you have a stale push branch, we will just push whatever was on the checkout branch. These will not affect folks that don't have push branches enabled. So for example, if we're making changes to your default branch and you're only using a default branch, we will never force push, which means you're not likely to lose data. Well, you won't lose data on your main branch. That is it around what we've done since the last dev meeting, and that is that. So let's crack on. Let me just see, what's this? Oh yeah, this I think was from a previous meeting because we skipped the last one. So this is now merged and Flux V1 is now archived. So just kind of jump on and go straight into changes to the roadmap, which is this PR that Stefan created. Stefan, do you want to talk about that PR?
Yes. So we've decided to reshape the roadmap and make the roadmap about feature sets, and APIs. So instead of setting a deadline or trying to do a Flux GA release for all the APIs, all the controllers, all the functionality, we concluded that's not going to happen anytime soon. So we are switching to a gradual promotion of feature sets and APIs to GA, in a way the same as Kubernetes does. So I have split the roadmap. Can you put it on the screen, the preview?
Yes, just a second.
Okay, so the new roadmap is split into milestones. First milestone is to do a GA release of the core GitOps APIs and the Bootstrap functionality. What this means is that, I don't know, after this release, the Flux Git repository, Flux customization, Flux incoming webhook for Git, which is called receiver. Those three APIs are promoted to V1, which means no breaking changes in the future and so on. This also implies that we are going to do a Flux CLI 2.0.0 release, which gives users assurances that we are not going to break any of these core features. And we are still not there yet. We wanted to do a release candidate this month, but I'm not sure if we can do it. We still have, so besides promoting the APIs, which is more about bumping the version from the V1 beta 2 to V1. So besides that, there are some other things that needs to happen. For example, we need to finalize the consolidation of Git and release that before GA. And consolidation of Git is not only about source controller and init automation controller. We also want to use the same packages, the same code path and everything in Flux Bootstrap. And this is how we can ensure, for example, that all the operations that Bootstrap is doing, source controller also be able to do it. And it's the same thing that we test in our Git package instead of relying on only on end-to-end tests at the end of the whole pipeline in Flux 2. Now, if the lead Git2 replacement goes well, this means Flux Bootstrap Git, which is our generic Bootstrap procedure, will now work across the board. We no longer have to tell people, hey, if you are on Azure DevOps or AWS Code Commit, you can't use the Bootstrap command. You have to do all these things manually because reasons. It's a long discussion. But anyway, if we manage to consolidate the Git implementation across the board, we'll finally solve this issue with Bootstrap. And another, so this is one major blocker, let's say, to a release candidate. And the other one is the refactoring of notification controller. I have a pull request opened from last week that does some changes to how notification controller works. It's more about aligning source control with source controller refactoring and also fixing some issues that we have in notification controller for a very long time. So those are the two, let's say, main blockers for this to go forward. So given that, yeah, half of December is almost dead, right? We don't plan to work on Christmas. If you scroll up a little. So under each milestone, I've added estimation for when we try to deliver a GA release for the feature set. So the first time I said Q1 next year. We may be able to do a release candidate by the end of this year, but we don't know. And another milestone right after this one, if you scroll a little bit down, it's around Helm. So we packaged all the Helm APIs under this Helm GA milestone, and what we would like to do is to promote all things that relate to the Helm feature at the same time. So this means Helm repository and Helm chart, which are APIs controlled by source controller, and source controller is quite ready. The blocker here is refactoring Helm controller, and what Hide is working on the atomic reconciliation, which is more than just refactoring. It's almost a rewrite of Helm controller and how Helm works. So this will probably take a long time to test. We'll probably do several preview builds, release candidates, and ask people as soon as we have something ready for them to test them on their clusters. Given that we don't really know how all of this will work, I've set the deadline to be Q2. So yeah, far away. Other things are promoting the making notifications GA, only the part around alerts and providers. And why this is not yet ready is because we really need to standardize our internal eventing system and how we pass metadata from one controller to another. This will probably be subject to an RFC. There is currently an RFC that Hide created around how we format the revision number, how we format digests, but this is just a small part of the event struct and how we do eventing. There are feature requests, for example, in Helm, where people are asking us, hey, I want to see in my alert not only the chart version, I want to see the app version, right? How can we send that? Well, of course, through some metadata attached to the event that Helm controller emits and source controller emits when it creates a chart and so on. So we need to find a good way to structure our events. And so not only us can rely on other integrations as well, because eventing and notification controller is a major integration point with Flux. Other projects depend on it. So we definitely need to create an RFC around eventing. Next is the image automation milestone. Here we are not quite sure what will happen with the image repository API, which its functionality is now duplicated in source controller in the OCI repository thing. Basically, they do quite the same stuff. The only difference right now is that an image repository object is backed by a caching system. So we cache in locally inside the controller, inside the image reflector controller, all the tags that we fetched from upstream. While in source controller, we don't cache them. We do the same operation. We get them all. We do sample filtering and all things on it. Then we throw them away. So this is just a very small difference between the two, right? We could have the cache feature inside source controller, and then we could for example, decommission image reflector controller and move the image policy reconciler to image update controller. So here also there are RFCs, big decisions to be made, and so on. And the last two things, S3 compatibility APIs, the bucket, the Flux bucket stuff that we didn't had many bug reports lately, but we really want to improve the testing on this one around cloud vendors and actually test with real backends, right? Like S3, like Google Bucket, Azure, and so on. I think for Azure, we have some tests, but that's the only cloud vendor which we actually test for. So before we go GA with the bucket, I think we really need to create an end-to-end test suite for it. And finally, Flux OCI artifacts. This is very new to Flux and very new to the whole thing that's happening around OCI right now. The idea about signing, SBOM, how do you refer between one OCI artifact to another, and so on. So I'm guessing Flux OCI artifacts will not go GA for some time until the community, has a solid idea and what OCI should be and how it should be used. So this is where we'll probably drive more innovation inside Flux in the future. We want to extend, for example, the cosign verification with attestations and so on. So it's here it will be a long time where Flux OCI artifacts will remain in the beta phase, which is not an experimental feature. You can today use Flux OCI artifacts in production with cosign static keys, for example. The part that is experimental, not only in Flux, but also in cosign and all the other integrations, is the keyless part, right? Where we'll probably have to do a lot of work to get that at GA. So given this, I would say this is the first milestone will hit. And finally, in the roadmap, I also listed all the RFCs because I think for people which are interested in what's the current state of Flux, where Flux is going, and so on, RFCs are the best information point, right? If you look at what people are proposing, in which state is each RFC, you can clearly have an idea where Flux is going and what we plan to do in the future. So yeah.
In addition to this, if you have any remarks on RFCs while they are in process, you can of course add your own comments around any ideas you have before they are finalized.
Yes, requests for comments are not comments only for Flux maintainers. We really need comments from anyone in the community or anyone interested in GitOps or Flux in general and so on. We decided to move forward with the RFC process for any big change in Flux. So even if this takes way longer than just create an issue and drop the pull request, I think the whole process is meant to also bring stability to Flux and how we change things in the future, especially after the GA release. And the pledge that we are not going to do any breaking changes. RFCs are very important because the breaking change maybe is not in the API itself, it's in the behavior, right? And with the RFCs, with use cases and so on, we may be able to identify breaking changes in behavior before we get to implement them, and I don't lose time implementing something that will never get in the end because it changes how Flux behaves. And yes, please review the roadmap, and yeah, should make this public as soon as we agree that what's there it's feasible. So any concerns about the current, the new roadmap? Anyone here? Or suggestions, or are the deadlines too tight? I hope not.
My view on it is that, well, it's definitely great to have that segregated by milestones, as I commented on the PR, from the Git perspective and things for the first release. I think is quite doable. Yeah, on the Git stuff, I think the only thing we haven't started yet is the Flux CLI change it, but that should be quite straightforward. And there are the things about the API validations, which might take a bit of time. But again, I think we have plenty of time until Q1 for that. So, but yeah, overall, yeah, I'm really happy with that.
So, Paulo, do you think we'll be able to do a release of Flux with Go Git everywhere, with, of course, the option of, you know, switching back to libgit2 if you need to through a future flag? But do you think that Go Git for source controller, image automation controller, and Flux CLI, only updating the package, not rewriting Bootstrap on top of the Git package, just updating Go Git, do you think these three things can come this month?
Yeah, so basically I created feature flags for both source controller and image automation controller. They're not merged yet, but what they would do is not convert, but basically use GoGit for everything instead of libgit2 and allow people to revert back if they want. So this would be like a kind of soft sunsetting of libgit2. If we align that with Flux CLI, that means that we can make a release, ask everyone to kind of migrate as soon as possible, just to see if there's any edge case that we need to fix. But yeah, we should be able to release that quite quickly. I just want to do another PR on the GoGit fork with further optimizations. So I think we improved in terms of memory churn like 70%. You know, we churn through 70% less memory than before, and I think I might be able to get that to a further 50%. So I should get that PR out today. Once that is merged, we can get GoGit released, and then just the release of everything, really. So beginning next week, tops.
Okay, I know Microsoft Azure team has an end-to-end test suite for Flux, right? So maybe we can communicate to them after we do the release so they can run their whole suite as soon as possible for the Go Git thing. I'm guessing because they are on Azure DevOps and everything, there is version 2, we may have better chances on catching some edge case or something. They have better chances than us, right? Because our Azure test
Yeah.
is very straightforward.
Brilliant.
Another thing that we really need to do soon is fix the Azure end-to-end testing Flux 2, which is currently failing. So from the last release, we no longer can run the Azure test, and I don't think Philip is here or he had any time for this. Ideally, we should get rid of libgit2 completely from that test and use GoGit and see how it works. So that's
Brilliant.
also, we need to create an issue and we need to track this. I know Philip ran the test manually before I did the last release. So the last release is good. but we really want to have those tests running before we do the next release, right?
Yeah, so that is something that I was talking with Sanskar earlier on today, and yeah, we definitely plan to have those kind of end-to-end tests on the package repository, because all the code will be there now after all this refactoring we've done. So we want to have that there, so we catch any major problem at the source of the changes, and then we have like some sort of like smoke test to make sure that the actual controllers also include all the changes and still work as they
This is
should.
also testing the CLI, right? What we are doing in Flux 2. So this is the final end-to-end test, and it should definitely work before the next release. I don't know, we either find a new version of libgit 2 that matches whatever it needs there, or ideally we'll delete libgit 2 from the Azure test and use GoGit in the code that sets up the repos. So we have Terraform code that creates the actual repo on Azure DevOps. Then we have Go code that does things, prepares the repo, does some operations before running the actual tests. And that's where the issue comes, because the Go code in the Azure test module uses libgit 2 for that. And we should use GoGit.
Yeah, and ideally even if we could the codes that we have on the package, because yeah, that is the core of our refactoring, right? Is to make sure that functionality is everywhere. Yeah, cool. All right, I will make sure we have an issue for that.
Great. That's it from me.
Cool. Any other items? Anything that folks want to discuss?
So we could discuss if there is nothing else, we could discuss what's happening with Equinix and the end-to-end tests on ARM64. The current machines are deprecated and we need to get rid of them. I have created a new machine which is different in many ways from what we had before. Is 3 times more powerful. It has Ubuntu 22.04 and all the tests are failing. And I cannot explain what's going on. Basically, all our Git operations are failing with certificate is invalid for CloudFront. Is valid for CloudFront, not github.com. So when it tries to do git clone over HTTPS from GitHub, it says the TLS is not good, it's a CloudFront TLS. Same happens with Helm OCI when it tries to pull charts from GitHub container registry. Same with Helm normal charts when it tries to get the index from GitHub pages and so on. And I'm really, really stuck. There is nothing on the internet around this server, no one else. Yeah, the first one to see it.
It does feel like like those kind of security tools that you try to pretty much domain the middle on all the egress, right? Have you checked if there's any machine level egress configured or any like custom routing?
Like, what happens if you just do a curl github.com? Does it show the same CloudFront error?
So if I do git clone with the CLI of the same URL, it works with no issues.
Oh, wow.
Our code doesn't. Our code is more strict when it comes to TLS than what Git and others are doing.
No, but that seems like you're being redirected to a different server than you should. So I would assume there is a proxy somewhere there that we are considering and something else isn't.
Yeah, no.
At least by the error message you mentioning, then yeah, The only thing I can think it would be like an environmental setting or something. Because
No,
if it's not picking up on the Git,
So I haven't configured nothing. No egress gateway, no, nothing. It's only
but if you do
Is
a print
this-
env, yeah, sorry.
Is this running the binary within the machine itself? So it's not being run through a container or nothing.
no.
It's just the controller being executed within the machine itself.
No. So it source controller fails to clone inside Kubernetes kind, inside the container, inside the pod, inside the container.
Oh, check if there's anything at the Docker configuration then, because anything that is applied at Docker would apply to, you know, all the internal containers, and kind is running on a container. So if you do like a Docker run Alpine, you get, you know, a container, and you do the test inside of an Alpine, see if that gets affected as well. I would assume so.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, always fun. Cool. Any other
Anyway,
topics?
in the meantime, all the end-to-end tests are done. So
All right. Yeah, I'll add that to the list of things for us too. Well, that's actually what you're doing. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Anything else we need to have a look or talk about? Well, otherwise, then let's cut this meeting short. And yeah, you guys have a nice day, and see you guys later.
bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.